Shalom, friends. Today, we're going to make butterfly sweet potato biscuits. Now, at Ben's in Gandevorim, we've made sweet potato biscuits, and the process, the doing of it is very fun, and we know that they're delicious, but we've never tried to make them as butterflies. So this is a big experiment, and we're going to see what happens today. I don't know. Okay, well, now we're ready to begin. So we always start with making sure that you've washed your hands really well. I just washed mine. And I always like to wear my apron when I'm baking or cooking. So I'm putting mine on, and you can do the same. And we'll go over the ingredients and the tools that you might need. The tools part, you might come up with something else. The ingredients, actually, maybe you would experiment too. Okay, but for today, what I'm using is flour. I'm going to start with the dry ingredients. Baking powder, sugar, and salt. Okay, now, also, of course, your sweet potato that was baked, so it got nice and soft, and your butter, and your milk. So those are the ingredients that you're going to need. Now, the tools that you're going to need, a whisk is great, perhaps a pastry cutter, perhaps a chopper like the kind we use at Ben's, perhaps a wooden spoon, definitely some measuring spoons and some measuring cups. Okay, we're ready to begin. Now, I already did the first step, and I measured all the dry ingredients that we're going to need, and I put them in this bowl right here. So I measured and leveled flour, salt, sugar, baking powder, and then I whisked them really well together. Now, whisking is a very fun activity, and you can whisk this as much as you want. So that's done. Now, the next thing we're moving to is something that children at Ben's really often like to do. So for the grown-ups who might be watching this, I would encourage you, if you can tolerate this, to allow your child to get her or his hands as much as they want into this butter process. It's messy, but I have seen people do this for a long time. So I'm going to use a chopper because I have one. And if you have one of these, you can use it. You can also use just a regular table knife. And it's really fun to chop the butter. Your main idea is that you want to chop it into as many little pieces as you can. The butter will probably get soft from being handled, and it might start to get all over your hands. That's totally fine. And just, I realize that this is not conventional wisdom about biscuit making. This is Gandevorim wisdom about biscuit making. So we're going to chop it up as much as we can. I'm going to stop here, but you could spend much more time. Now I'm going to put it in the bowl of wet ingredients. I'm going to take the whisk out. Now, you could use a pastry cutter to mash that butter in, or if you had a potato masher, which I don't have, or you can use your hands, which I'm going to do because it's really fun to mush this butter in. So it's really hard for you to see what I'm doing right here, but I'm going to just kind of lift my hands up so you can see how I'm kind of trying to push the butter so that it gets mixed in with that flour mixture. And you could do this for a long time also. It's nice and squeezy. It texture. It's not too soft, but it's squishy. Let's say it like that. So you want to get that butter really mixed in. So that's really, so that all the flour is really mixed in with the butter. Okay, I'm going to stop there, but I could have spent a lot more time doing that. Now, the next part of the process is a process that I have seen some people at Ben's also really enjoy doing. Now, you're going to start with a yam or a sweet potato that you baked so it got nice and soft. Then you need to get it mushy so that you can add it to the dry ingredients. And so you could use your pastry cutter or a potato masher or a chopper or a spoon or your hands. Here I go. This is, and if you use your hands, you could do this for a long time. So I'm going to add, oh, this is great. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to add it in, and I think I need most of it, but not all of it. You can see I'm being kind of rough with my proportions, but I will give you the precise proportions separate from this. Okay, so now the sweet potato has to get mixed in, and I'm going to use my hands again to mix and mix and mix. Now I'm doing this pretty quickly so that you don't have to sit around and watch somebody mix for a long time. But obviously all of these steps could go on for much longer. Now this is getting pretty nicely mixed up. And oh, it's a really pretty color, by the way. I kind of had forgotten. It's kind of this pleasant orange-yellow color. And now we're going to need to add some milk. You're going to have to kind of, it actually already looks like it doesn't need much milk at all. So I'm going to try and kind of clean my hands off a bit, which is another fun thing to do. And I'm going to add just a little bit of milk, because I think if I add too much, it'll make the mixture difficult to work with. It'll make it too wet. So I'm just going to add a little teeny bit, just for the sake of adding milk. Okay. Now I'm going to mix this up again with my hands, and as with anything, sometimes it's kind of trial and error. I'm going to add a little more flour. It just looks like that's going to need to happen. There, so it's not too wet. Okay. I'm going to add even more flour. Good. Okay. Now, and so now what I'm doing is mixing it, but I'm also kind of just gently kneading it. I think that this still looks a little bit wet, but we're gonna go with it. When you're doing it at home, I probably would try for a slightly drier consistency. Now I'm going to spread flour on my table so that I have a working surface. Now sometimes with biscuits, you use a rolling pin or your hands to roll them out, but this is what we're going to try. We're going to try to make a butterfly or butterflies. I don't know. So this is what I'm thinking I'm going to do. I'm going to pull off a little section of it. This is very experimental, I have to remind you. And I'm going to make kind of like a little snake or a little worm. Okay, I'm going to put that on my baking sheet, which I'll try and just kind of put over here with the hope that maybe you can see it. Then I'm going to make 4 balls. I'm thinking that those will be the sections of the wings. So I made a ball, and I'm going to just flatten it a little bit. I'm going to just see what happens here. I don't know. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to just kind of flatten it a little bit. There. The real question will be, what happens as we bake this? Who knows? But I'll show you a picture of how this turns out when I'm done baking it. And it'll be very interesting if you do this to see how yours turn out. And maybe you'll figure out a totally different system. This is kind of what I'm thinking. I'm going to hold it so that you can see. Here's the kind of snake or worm. That's the center part of the butterfly. And then remember how a butterfly usually has kind of an upper section to the wing and then a lower section. So here's the upper sections and here's the lower sections. So I put this on a greased baking sheet, and this is another thing. This is another thing that the process of greasing the baking sheet, it just in and of itself can be very satisfying. So there's the center part, and there's one wing, and there's the other wing. All right, I'm going to go ahead, make more of them, and bake them, and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. But I hope that you just have a whole lot of fun doing this. Let me know what happens. All right, bye-bye.